teach a set of creative thinking tools that those in the organization can use. And so, first of all, these tools will give you something you can apply for the rest of your life when you're thinking about creative problem solving. But the other interesting I often go back to something that Julie Sweet said. She's the CEO of Accenture, one of the big global consulting firms. And she said she looks for two things when she hires new leaders into the organization. The first is their leadership skills, their ability to lead others, really important. But the second is their curiosity, their ability to ask better questions. Because in this age of AI, that sense of curiosity, being able to ask better questions is kind of one of our superpowers that we have as humans. You know, there's a Peter Drucker, the great management theorist, said the problem in management decisions is often that not that they're asking they're looking for the right solution, they've chosen the right solution, but they weren't actually necessarily asking the right questions. So one of the things I work with organizations is really to help them unlock that sense of curiosity with everyone in the organization. And that can have different effects. That can be having that sense of curiosity about how do we reduce costs? How do we make the organization more efficient? Or how do we increase the amount of joy those people are having at work so they're doing their greatest work? Or how do we increase revenues and sales? All of this, everything that you have around you just now, every device that you have around you, everything, your table, everything came from the creative idea of someone asking questions. How can we make that thing better? So that's what our superpower is, that sense of curiosity. So they say what is valued in a place is cultivated there. And first of all, you have to just value creativity in the organization, which essentially means you're creating a culture of creativity. That creativity isn't the province of those that work in the marketing department or the advertising department. Everyone in the organization has a requirement to really unlock their creative potential. And that is especially true today because recent studies by the World Economic Forum have recognized that creativity and creative thinking is the most important soft skill that we need to be developing. In fact, LinkedIn published a study the other day which found that creativity and creative thinking is the #1 soft skill that employers are looking for today, while around things like AI around the harder skills. So first of all, we have to value creativity in its own right, the reason that our people can be creative in their work. Secondly, we have to create those systems. And one of the things I do is I work with organizations to create a common framework and language around creativity. I work with a lot of people that are in the world of engineering, real hard scientific areas. And sometimes those people in the maybe finance areas don't consider themselves to be that creative. So it's really defining what do we mean by creativity. Creativity is about bringing new ideas to the mind. Innovation is about bringing new ideas to the world. But without creativity, there is no innovation. So creativity is the engine of innovation. And I'll give you a very simple example of what that idea, sense of creativity looks like, that culture of creativity. We have this expression, psychological safety, which is the sense that everyone in the organization feels empowered to put forward their ideas and also challenge other people's ideas as well. So we need to have those things there. Now, a common mistake I see companies do is they do their brainstorming and their ideation sessions. Now, they make a couple of mistakes often. First is you have to attend a brainstorming session. You're not quite sure what it's for. And for many people who are kind of quieter thinkers, they like to think about the problem in advance of actually coming into the room. Not everyone likes to just have the idea pushed upon them or what is the problem. So, and I would say this, especially if you work with engineers or those from finance or mathematical backgrounds, tell them in advance what the challenge is or the problem is that meeting is intended to solve so they can think about it in advance. Then when you come into the room, one thing we often see is you have one man, it's usually a man, holding the one whiteboard pen in the room, and it's his ideas that end up dominating the board. So we need to get rid of that. Everyone should have post-it notes, pens, bring in a facilitator if you can. That's fantastic if you can do that. You can even use AI to help facilitate your brainstorming ideation session. But the biggest piece of advice I can give you is to spend that first 10 minutes of any brainstorming or ideation session with your team simply asking questions, asking better questions. Why questions? Who questions? What questions? What you will find is if you spend that first 10 minutes just asking questions rather than immediately looking for solutions, the problem you thought was the problem isn't the main problem. There's something that actually sits behind it. So it goes back to that sense of our curiosity. So the first thing I would say when we're doing creative problem solving, it's giving everyone a sense that they feel empowered to be able to do this. The worst thing you can possibly hear, and I heard this from a client the other day who said to me, oh, our senior vice president said to us, go away and just be creative on this thing. But we had no ways like thinking about how we get into this, how we kind of solve this particular problem. So that the way that I teach it, and I do this in some of the keynotes, but I do it even more deeply in the workshops, the leadership workshops that I do, is I teach a set of creative thinking tools that those in the organization can use. And so, first of all, these tools will give you something you can apply for the rest of your life when you're thinking about creative problem solving. But the other interesting thing that it does is it creates a common language in the organization, which means that anyone in the organization, let's say someone comes to with an idea, you can say, okay, let's do a quick out on that. Let's do a PNC on that, for example. And that allows, just that sense of psychological safety that we can try and we can experiment with things as well. But often what I tend to find with creative problem solving is we kind of going back to this idea that we try to immediately come up with solutions when we would be much better served by just spending a little bit of time at the start by really defining properly what the problem is. And that's by asking what we call catalytic questions. So those are just a couple of ideas on how we can improve creative problem solving. I want audiences to leave that room after they've heard me speak feeling inspired, entertained, educated, and equipped with the tools that they need to have and the mindsets to really take advantage of this new age of AI that we're going into. From my perspective, also the person that usually brings me in to speak at their event, I want to make them a rock star. I want people event like the one I was just doing a few days ago, coming up to that person that brought me in saying, great job, fantastic. That was the best keynote speaker that you've ever brought in. So I kind of want to give that sense of accomplishment to the person that's bringing me in. And for the people in the room, I want to create a transformation. I want them going into that room, maybe thinking one set of things, but when they leave, their worldview is maybe slightly different. They've changed, because otherwise all I'd be doing is just being an entertainer. And that's not my job. My job, yeah, sure, I want to entertain and make people laugh and have a great time. But if I've not changed the mindsets of the people in the room for the better, so they can be more equipped and they feel this creative potential within inside of them, and they know how to use some of these tools, then what's it worth? So my job is to create value for that audience, and for the person that brings me in, to make them a rock star for bringing me in to come and speak to their audience.